Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Inner Conquest, the world's greatest modern metaphysics channel. I'm your host, Jacob Edens, and today we are going to be talking about sovereignty and authority. So, when you come into this realm, right, because I look at things through the optics of games, it's it's easy to look at something as a game because you can factor in the dynamics and then you can ascertain how to win. Okay. So you can look at life through anything you want to from a perspective standpoint. You could look at it as a school, right? It's really not, but it's a framework that could work. You could look at it as a movie. You could look at it however you want. But I like games because they're more multifaceted and it allows you the ability to develop what you would consider your character, right? If you're in a game, you get the ability to customize and create and cultivate your character based on their identity, skills, etc., that can then have a unique individualized experience of navigating that game in a way that reflects your authentic nature, right? So when you understand that life is a game, what you want to understand is that what everybody's looking for is knowledge and empowerment, right? So when you look for knowledge and empowerment, when you're in a game, you have to understand the context of the game, right? So in this particular game, you have to understand that there's a memory wipe when you're born. So you can't remember anything before you're born, okay? It's a big deal to understand that because if you understand that, even if you don't experientially know that to be true yet, you can understand that you are an individual before what you would consider incarnated, right? So like if you are going into a lucid dream, you don't incarnate into a lucid dream. You just walk through the door and you're in the dream and you're like, this is cool, let's go to Chicago. And then you go to the Chicago lucid dream space and you're like, this is crazy, I can fly, right? Like you have malleability and control and the reality is responding to you, right? Which you could consider a higher dimensional plane, but it's still what you would call a dimensional space within which you're accessing, right? So dreams are a good example of you, the soul, leaving your body and going into a space that is reflecting your assumptions, your thoughts, your beliefs, i.e., the contents of your subconscious, right? So if you think about conscious and subconscious, conscious is your awareness, right? Your subconscious is what you're still aware of, but it's automated and autonomic, right? So like I'm aware of my heart beating, but I'm not consciously executing that process, right? So when you have consciousness and subconscious, they complement each other really well because in the same way, if you got in a car and you had to manually work all the pistons, then it would be too much and you wouldn't be able to apply your distinct focus on just driving and going where you want to go and enjoy the driving experience. So understanding conscious and subconscious is good because everything is conscious, right? You're aware of your body, you're aware of your breathing and stuff like that. But some things you want to have like subroutines automated, right? You want them to be autonomic. You want them to persist, right? So when you understand that persistent nature and the dual capability of your mind to be conscious and subconscious at the same time, you now understand that you can program those subconscious aspects to be the way you want them to be, and your consciousness can continue to evolve and become more and more aware of more things in your reality so that you can have the opportunity to either lock them in or change them, right? So when you have your first experience of essentially waking up in the game, what you're doing is you're usually trying to solve something. So you're solving like a money thing, or you're solving like a health thing, or you're trying to figure out where somebody went when they died, or you're not feeling like this is all there is, right? All normal feelings, etc. So you're essentially going outside of yourself to solve that issue. Oh, I need more money. I need a better job. I need this thing. I need that thing, right? So it's a classic mistake that is innately designed because of you forgetting when you come in that the creative genesis of your reality is within you, right? So when you have something like law of assumption and you exercise that law enough times to where you assume something is the way you want it to be, and then you see the world conform to that assumption, like you assume that there's a certain amount of money in your account, and then you see a bridge of incidents unfold to meet that assumption, or you have an affirmation that you're this way, and then you see the world reflect that affirmation. You're like, I'm the best person ever. And then somebody comes up to you and goes, hey, you're the best person ever. And you value tag that as your input being reflected through the reality, now you begin to understand that the causative point of all things is within you, right? That's why there's such a front on your attention to get you to focus on things like, media, and people want you to buy narratives and they want you to buy all these different things, because that, what you could call Christed authoritative power, which is not like, a Messiah or something like that. Those are all allegories for your own innate being. Is that essentially what you consent to and accept to be true about your reality and or identify as is reflected to you. So if you have a bunch of people who want to get a bunch of people to do a bunch of things, the way to do that is to get those people to believe that that's how it is, because their own creative genesis will make that a reality in a co-creative space, right? The world isn't really populated unless there's a population in it, and that world is created and cultivated through the assumptions, beliefs, and identities of those individuals who live in that domain. Because whether you understand it or not, you're always what you could consider manifesting your reality or creating your reality. You're always acting as something. You're always assuming something to be true. You're always believing, which is repeated thought without contradiction, and you're consenting through things, through your attention to things that you pay attention to. So understanding that, you just want to understand that when you want to reclaim what you could consider sovereignty and authority over your reality to create your ideal domain or your version of reality because you decided that it's optimal for you, not because it's the right reality or because it'll make somebody else feel better, etc., you have to eventually acknowledge the creative genesis of all things as stemming from within yourself, right? So if you think and assume something and it hardens into a fact, that's why law of assumption is such a powerful tool to understand, because once you understand how to accurately hold assumptions and you cultivate the willpower, focus, and persistence to see those assumptions harden into facts that are identical to your assumption that you decided to hold and you initiated that creative process, now you really can't go back to not understanding that you have the ability to shape the world around you. And once you understand that, it puts you in the driver's seat, right? So some people don't accept that mantle of responsibility because they've created things and in the back of their mind, they know they're creating it, but they don't want to accept responsibility for that. And that's totally fine, right? Like, it's not a moral judgment thing. It's just understanding that if you have a propensity or an addiction to a certain state that's not conducive to you, the way that you get rid of that state is by disempowering it and disidentifying with it, right? But if that's a part of your identity, it can feel like a part of you is dying. So you just want to understand that your authority and your sovereignty is essentially based off of what you would consider your innate Christ consciousness, right? So when you talk about Christ, that is through Christian metaphysical lensing of Neville Goddard, right? As scripture interpreted as allegory of your own internal being and its movements in a third dimensional world, right? How does it play out, right? Because if you're in a higher dimensional space, which is where we all come from keyed up dimensions, right? To use another Goddard term, this is a keyed down dimension, where you have much more authority, free will, and ability to shape your world in the same way where if you're lucid in a lucid dream, you are able to create whatever you want instantaneously, right? So in this world, it's a keyed down versus a slower lucid dream, but it's still a lucid dream, right? That's why they call it the Maya or the illusion or whatever, right? And essentially what the context is behind this place is to give you an experience of what you are not, right? So if you're all powerful in a lucid dream and you can have whatever you want right now, this reality is designed to make you into a human versus that, God type instant creator being, to give you the contrast to show you what it would be like to live a human life, right? So what that involves is if I want something manifested, I hold that mental state, and that lucid dream component is still working the same way, but instead it will give me the experience of what you would consider a bridge of incidents or an unfolding process that would give me a journey to my endpoint destination. So once you understand just a couple of core things of, hey, you lost your memory, right? So you could have the experience of being a little kid and being a human, because if you knew that your inner world was being reflected right off bat, you would just get your inner world in alignment with what you wanted and you'd live the exact life that you want, right? But in order to throw on a difficulty modifier, right, you beat a game so many times that you're like, well, what if we did this and handicapped myself so that this would be harder, right? How would I perform under these conditions if this was, we made this thing harder, or you didn't have as much of this, right? So it's that type of thing when experiencing Earth as a game. Your memory is completely shot. You don't remember what the fuck you were doing before you were born, and you have no idea of the greater reality. Your entire world is constructed in this independent realm. So once you understand that, then you can start to understand the tools that can help you break the mental mind frames that keep you enslaved to this reality. Number one being that there's power outside of you. Because any power outside of you in your own localized sphere, the only way that it can have power over you is if you assume that it does and you give it power, right? So that's how powerful you are, is if you say something has power over you, you actually give it the very power that you say it has, right? So that's why the circus is such a circus, is because everybody has that power and that authority, but only a few people know that, and everybody else got their memory wiped. So it's like everyone's walking around with loaded handguns. So when you start to wake up, a lot of it is really just curating that inner world to be in alignment with what you want in terms of like health, wealth, freedom, you get your body right, all that type of basic stuff, right? You get that like really locked in and legit. And all that comes from just really simply understanding, 2 or 3 concepts. I am is the name of God. That's your I amness. Your I amness is what gives you everything, right? It's like the Father's good privilege to give you the kingdom. What the kingdom is understanding that you are an individualized identity in what you could consider the 0-point field, right? So the 0-point field, God, interchangeable names, that is the all space of all awareness and consciousness within which every single person is a part of that. We all make that up, right? But within that, you are an individual, an individualized, permanently identified aspect of self, right? So you are legitly you, right? But we all share that 0-point consciousness, that co-creative space that is the genesis of all things. So when we make an assumption that that 0 point is wavelength in a certain way, we assume a thought that encapsulates a certain aspect of reality, and we say this is real. In the same way that some guy was making this microphone, he thought about it in his head, he drew it, he assumed that it could be made, and then now we have this physical thing. This was just a thought in his head, right, that was in the 0-point field, and because of the keyed down nature of this realm, there was a unfolding process to its what you would call physical manifestation. In the same way that, if you're playing a video game and then you just go into the video game, you're still you and you're in the video game, right? But there's an unfolding process. Hey, in order to get into this game, you got to forget who you are, and then you got to go through this birthing process of 9 months, and then you're in the game, but you're still a baby, and then you got to involve. See what I'm saying? Like the second you decide you're going into the game, but now there's a process that gives you that experience of where if you were in a higher keyed up dimensional space, it would be instantaneous, right? So you're dealing with factors and difficulty multipliers in this reality, which can also include things like decay and, fucking aging and all sorts of shit, right? To give you an experience, because this game is on, you always assume it's on easy mode, but for context, if you're putting it against a higher dimensional space, this is a hard mode reality. So the thing that's cool about hard mode realities is that once you wake up to that assumptive power, now you have a lot of different dimensions within which you can evolve yourself, right? So like if you are dealing with scarcity or you're dealing with health issues or whatever, if you assume that those have been solved now, you're going to experience not only a massive life upgrade, but you're going to have more contrast from which to actually develop yourself into new, unique, and more powerful iterations. So there's massive value in this place, but you really only reap those rewards once your awareness turns on. And your awareness is your conscious mind, right? So your awareness thinks and it focuses. And then your subconscious is what runs the programs in the game, right? So the best use of your conscious mind is to identify aspects of your reality that you like and accept them to be true and continue to be the identity that experiences those. And then aspects of your reality that you want to upgrade, you're using that conscious mind to basically form yourself into the identity so that your subconscious can run that autonomically as a normalized lived experience, right? So like if you don't have any money, now you're normalizing having more than enough and your wealth increasing every day. And you're going through that process of being that identity before the external world shows it to you, because you understand in the same way, once you make that decision, it is done, but that unfolding process is going as long as you stay the same and assign good value and meaning to everything that's unfolding to you as if it is leading to the same spot that you put into the GPS, right? Like when the GPS is plugged for downtown and it goes rerouting, you're like, oh, this is good. We're going to get to downtown faster, right? You see what I'm saying? Like you've made the decision, it's finalized. So now you're just riding through that bridge of instance. And with that, you're able to master the reality in a way that you could never do by consciously trying to control and manipulate things outside of yourself, because everything is coming through you, right? So as you understand that innate power, that ability to use your imagination to shape the reality, you are now self-empowered and self-determinate and not reliant on anything outside of you, which is a great thing, because now you are the exception to the rule, because you understand that everything in your reality has to be there because you consent to it in one way or another. So when you talk about consent is simply observing, accepting to be true, and not contradicting. This room has tan walls. I consent to that because I accept it. But the second I go, nope, this place looks better with blue walls, I've decided this is a blue walled room. My external reality does not reflect that immediate shift of consciousness yet. But in the sincerity and the authority, right, depending on the certainty of my conviction, that room has already changed, right? Because now I'm coming into it, I'm seeing it as blue. I'm seeing in my mind in the same way that this guy who created this microphone sees the microphone in his mind has already done. He's workshopping it, but it's the decision to have it made is done, right? This room is already blue in that higher plane, and now the unfolding process, as long as it is not contradicted, will become the manifested third dimensional experience for myself. As long as I continue to identify as a person who's in the blue room, see it as blue, assume that it's done, and then allow it to unfold. So as you get that inner understanding and that inner knowing, now you can begin to be the source of the change you want to see in your life without having to be dependent on anything else, which is the ultimate sign of liberation. Because once you kill all of what Goddard would call those second causes, now you can actually take responsibility for the things that you consented to, right? And this isn't a moralistic judgment thing. It's just like like judgment isn't like, people ascribe judgment as a moral thing, but it's like freezing something, right? It's like a tree growing up and you're like, this tree's so small, it'll never be a big tree. And then you just stomp it into the ground. It's like, well, if you would have let it go, it would have turned into a bigger tree, but you decided its run was done there, right? So that's why judgment isn't the greatest unless you're judging righteously, which is judging accurately. You can replace righteous with accurate. And, if your goal is to be healthy and then you're saying, I am health now, you can judge your input and go, that's perfect input. That's perfect input. No, I am healthy. See what I'm saying? You're locking it into your ideal. So that's righteous judgment, is judging accurately and judging what is good as true, saying, no, that's true. That's what I want. I'm healthy because it benefits myself and others. No, I am health. I am health, right? And you keep laying in that solidification of your inner being and allowing the external world to reflect that internal change. And once you get that, dude, game on, baby. This shit gets really fun. So like the primary thing is that not a lot of people are having fun, right? So like you got to have like you got to have the ability to curate your reality. You got to have the knowledge, and then you got to run that law of assumption a couple times so you understand the law, because you are the law, right? The law isn't like some principle that you learn about and then do. It's what you're doing all the time. So that's why people talk about awakening. You're just becoming aware of that process, and then you're disciplining, which means to become a disciple, which is a disciple of Christ, which is your inner being, your wonderful human imagination, which means that you are loyal to that inner being or wonderful human imagination, where you would ask, what do you mean loyal? Well, you ascribe power to that vision over what the external world has already created through your previous visions, right? Because the second you put power valuation into second causation, you're living a lie, because that thing in of itself doesn't have any more power than the power that you give it. And even more so, it's not the creative genesis, right? That assumptive power, that I am consciousness, I am this, I am that, I am not that. That is your internal creative engine that's going to manifest unseen to seen, create your life, right? So anytime you take power away from that, you give yourself an experience of this thing having power over you. Because in actuality, the only reason that thing has power over you is because this thing is giving it power. So you see what I'm saying? And the only way you could do that consistently is if you were asleep, which is why this reality wipes your memory and puts you into a groggy state so that you can have the experience of fuckery, right? But once you come out of the fuckery, you're like, all right, man, let's play the game on my terms. And that all comes from understanding the core innate power that you have to project your will and consciousness into the greater reality. So I know you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave comments for future videos. Additionally, the link tree has all my coaching. So if you want to do the one-on-ones, texts, emails, as well as protocols, you can find all of that in the link tree in the bio. And more important than any of that, go conquer, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.